Part 3, Finding Determinants of 3 by 3 Matrices. To find the determinant of a 3 by 3 matrix, we're going to expand along some row or column and use a sign chart. Now in this case, we're going to expand along row 1 to find the determinant. And what I mean by a sign chart is if I start in the top left corner, I have plus, and then I'm going to go back and forth between plus and minus on the rows and columns. So the first row will be plus, minus, plus, first column plus, minus, plus, second row then ends up minus, plus, minus, etc. So that's the sign chart that we're going to use right here. So to expand along the first row, I'm going to use a plus 3, a minus 1, and a plus a negative 2, because that is the first row of the sign chart. And then here's what I mean by expand along that row. So I'll start with the plus 3, and then if I cross off the row and column that have that 3 in it, I'm left with the negative 5, 4, 2, and 1. So I'll take that plus 3 and multiply it by the determinant of the matrix of what would be left if I cross off the row or column. So next I have minus 1 times, see what I get if I cross off the row or column with that 1, and I have 2, 4, 3, 1, and I'll find that determinant. And then I have plus negative 2, cross off the row and column with the negative 2, and I have 2, negative 5, 3, 2. So this is the calculation I need to do to find the determinant. So I have 3 times, now this determinant, negative 5 times 1 minus 2 times 4, so negative 5 minus 8, minus 1 times 2 minus 12, plus a negative 2 times 4 minus a negative 15, which is 3 times negative 13 minus 1 times negative 10 minus 2 times 19, which gives us negative 39 plus 10 minus 38, or negative 67. So the determinant of A is negative 67. Now we don't have to use row 1 to expand on. We could use any row or column. Row 1's a pretty easy one to do most of the time because it's just convenient to start with the row 1, helps you keep everything organized. Another way to think about the same thing is using what we call cofactors to find the determinant instead of the sign chart. So a cofactor, first by finding a cofactor, we need to find the minor. So the minor is the matrix you'd have if you cross off the row or column. So the minor for A11, if we cross off A11, we're left with this part right here. So that's the minor, means what do we have left after we cross off the row or column. So for the matrix A, the same matrix, the minors are along what we had before. So M11, if we cross off the first row, first column, we have this negative 5, 4, 2, 1 left, and that's what's right here. For M12, if I cross off row 1 and column 2, what I have left is this 2, 4, 3, 1. And the same thing for the M13. Cross off row 1, column 3, and we have that minor. So we found the minors before. Now the cofactor would be the minor along with a sign, a plus or minus. And we find that plus or minus, instead of using a sign chart, we can do negative 1 to the power of the row number plus the column number. So for example, here was our minors right here. So the cofactor for row 1, column 1 would be negative 1 to the power of 1 plus 1 times the minor of what we already found. So negative 1 to the second power, of course, is 1. So we have negative 13. For row 1, column 2, the sign that we'd have in that sign chart is negative 1 to the 1 plus 2 power, or negative 1 to the third power, or negative 1. So our sign chart, remember, had plus, minus, plus in the first row. So row 1, column 2, that would be this one, and that's why it's a minus, because 1 plus 2 is odd, and negative 1 to an odd power is negative 1. And then the same thing for the row 1, column 3, we end up with a positive for that one. So to use the cofactors, which we just found, the negative 13, the 10, and the 19, to find the determinant, we do the element times the cofactor. So instead of the sign chart, we're just finding that cofactor, which then would include that sign. it's easier for me to think about this just with the sign chart instead of adding up the row and column number and deciding if it's positive or negative. If the matrix is big enough, that might be easier. But with the smaller matrix, like most of the ones that we're going to do in this class, the sign chart might be easier. The same determinant as what we had before. No matter which row or column you use to expand on, you're going to get the same number for the determinant. So let's try the same one again, but let's expand along column 2. So column 2 is this 1, -5, 2. So if I think about the sign chart, or use the cofactor method to find the sign, I want this right here. So negative plus negative. So negative plus negative, I'm just going to put in there, minus plus minus, the sign that I'm going to use. So I'm going to start with -1 times what I would get if I crossed off that row and column. And I'll find that determinant. And then I have plus a -5 times what I would get if I crossed off the row or column that has a -5. And you don't have to actually physically cross them off. That can be a lot to erase, especially if you're using a pencil on paper instead of using a computer. So I didn't erase it. I'm just picturing in my head what would happen if I cross off that row and column that has the -5. And then I have -2, and if I cross off that row and column, I'm left with this matrix right here. So this is what I need to find. -1 times 2 minus 12 minus 5 times 3 minus a -6 minus 2 times 12 minus a -4, which is -1 times -10 minus 5 times 9 minus 2 times 16, or 10 minus 45 minus 32, which is still -67. So still the same determinant, even though I used column 2 instead of row 1 that we did before. Now we can use the exact same method to find the determinant of this matrix. Now this matrix is bigger, so it seems like it's going to be harder until I notice that there is a column here that has a bunch of zeros in it. So find the row or column with the most zeros, and that would be the one you want to expand on. And the reason why is because when I do 0 times the determinant of the matrix that I'd get if I crossed off that row and column, but 0 times any number is just 0. So the only one I have to worry about is the one that's not 0. Everything else is times 0. So I need to think about the sign. So that's the third row, first column. So the sign would be -1 to the 3 plus 4. That 1 is in the third row, fourth column, which is -1 to the 7th power, which is -1. So I know I need a -1. And then the determinant, what would I have left if I cross off that row and column? I have this 3, 2, 0 for the first row, second row is 0, 1, 4, and third row is 0, 2, 1. So I've got it down to a 3 by 3 matrix now. Notice that the first column here has 2 zeros in it. So I'm going to do the first column. So I have the -1 in front. So -1 times, and then I'll do 3 times the determinant of what I would get if I crossed off the row and column with the 3. I could also do minus 0 times the determinant I'd get if I crossed off the row and column, and then plus the final 0. But I don't have to do those because 0 times any number is just 0. So this is all I need to do. So -1 times 3 times the determinant of this right here, which is -3 times 1 minus 8, or -3 times -7, which is -21. So the determinant of C is 21.